Great. John Little. Thank you so much for joining us, John. Okay, great. So a number of you were on last call. We did the kickoff meeting for the steering committee, and a number of you are on that steering committee. Thank you for joining us again today. I think some of what you're going to hear today is a rehash of some of the stuff that you've heard before, but stick with it because there's a number of things that are very important to this process, and you'll be helpful in gathering up, I think, all of the jurisdictions that we need to get onto these calls with us coming forward. So, so without any further ado, I'm gonna get started on the presentation here, and I'll take you through this process. So as many of you know, the Sullivan County is updating its hazard mitigation plan. And again, we at the University of Albany are working with Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services to assist Sullivan County in updating their hazard mitigation plan. And we'll talk a little bit about the importance of that coming up very shortly. So again, we're working with DISHES, which has a grant award from FEMA in order to do a pilot project. We're also working with Behan Planning and Design as a consultant who helps with doing public outreach and public meetings and participatory meetings. So you'll hear a little bit from Michael Allen from Behan as well. And we're not only working with the counties of Delaware and Sullivan, we're also working upstate with Hamilton and Fulton County as counties as part of our pilot project. And at the end of this pilot project, we will have hazard mitigation plans for all 4 of those counties and a tested suite of software tools that we're going to show you shortly that will be utilized across the state going forward as a hazard mitigation planning program. So to get started, I just want to introduce you to everybody that's working on this this project. Specifically the folks that are working on it on the core working group, and then the folks from FEMA and DISHES that are working on it from the state and federal levels. So in Sullivan County right now on the core planning group, we have Jill Wire and Rick Sawyer. Do you want to say anything about the role that you have in this project?
Yeah, my name is Rick Sauer. I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety for Sullivan County, so I don't actually work for the planning department, but Eric contacted us back in late 2018 and asked us if we'd be interested in doing this. And our hazard mitigation plan is outdated in the county, so we were very happy to join Eric and his team. As you'll see, we have a very tight timeline, and your cooperation and patience will be greatly appreciated. But I think this will be great. It'll be a nice virtual platform. And like Eric said, there's only 4 counties in the state that are doing this right now, so we're pretty excited about it. So we appreciate your help and look forward to finishing this up, hopefully in January of 2021.
Thanks, Rick.
And I just wanted to add that I was involved in the last one, so I'm here just for some continuity and for historic knowledge to kind of keep the process moving, and coming up with a plan that all the towns and villages can agree to and buy into, because as a requirement they will all have to adopt the plan. So we just want to make sure we're all working together.
Great. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Rick. And then from Avail, we have Dr. Catherine T. Lawson, who is the director. She runs the Masters in Regional Planning program at the University at Albany in the Geography and Planning department, and she's the director of the laboratory that we have called Avail. And I'm the program manager at Avail, project manager of a number of projects throughout the state and federal projects. And I'm going to be a liaison for a number of communities in this on this project. So the way that we are working as a lab is that each one of us is going to have a list of communities that we are directly working with in order to interview, collect data, and introduce them to the software tools and the planning process. So we have also Erica Corsi on the line.
Hello, everybody. My name is Erica. I'm a project manager at Avail. I am the liaison for the town of Delaware, town of Coshecton, town of Fremont, town of Thompson, village of Monticello, village of Wurtsboro, and the village of Bloomingburg. So please reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns during the planning and updating process.
Wonderful. And Adam Toby from our lab is not available to be here today either. And let me just remind folks, if you could mute your line, or I'll have Erica Corsi mute you via her back-end tools that she's got. So please stay muted if you could, unless I've called on you, so we don't have any background noise. So yeah, again, Adam Toby is not with us today, but he's another person. You've probably heard his voice on your answering machines. He's reaching out to a number of different communities in Sullivan County as well. And then we have Sabrina Jeffcoat.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Jeffcoat. I just wanted to start by saying I appreciate the opportunity to work with you all during your hazard mitigation update process. And so I'll be the liaison for the towns of Fremont, Liberty, Bethel, and Tustin. And so that means if you have anything that you need help with, feel free to contact me as necessary. And I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks. And now we're moving on to Behan Planning and Design. Michael Allen, if you could talk a little bit about what you're up to in this project.
Hi, my name is Michael Allen with Behan Planning and Design. We're a land use and community planning consulting firm based out of Saratoga Springs. We're going to be leading up a lot of the charge with some of the jurisdictional meetings, which Eric is going to be telling you about. And we have a little bit more to go into at that point, I think.
Great. And then from Dishes, we have Karina Cavallo and Shannon Clark.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karina from Homeland Security and Emergency Services, and I'll talk a little bit more about the project in a few minutes, but very happy to be here. I'm very happy to see everybody participating, so thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shannon Clark. I'm a planning manager with Mitigation. I've worked very closely with the Bill for some time now, and now working very closely with Dishes and FEMA. A lot of it is going to be behind the scenes, what we're doing to help, this project process along. But we'd really love for you to consider us, part of your core planning team, and feel free to reach out to us at any point. And we will see you often during the planning process. And we're excited to see this pilot, kick off and see how it can be useful to your communities, and how all of you can also give us feedback about, the development here. So thanks a lot.
And then from FEMA, we have Paul Houle.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to join you. Unfortunately, I'll only be able to join you for a few minutes. I have to get off at 3:30 for another appointment. But it is great to see that you're working on this. And Rick, you noted that there are just 4 counties in New York State which are putting their plans online, and that's kind of neat. I think that maybe the first four counties in the country doing this, because New York State's pretty much on the cutting edge of online plans. The state plan was the first state plan to go online. New York City is a local plan, but honestly, I don't count New York City as a real local area. But they have an online plan. And other than that, the 4 counties of Delaware, Sullivan, Fulton, and
Hamilton.
It's not Herkimer? Hamilton.
Yep.
Will be there. And we're hoping that all the other counties in the state follow your lead, but you're going to be on the cutting edge. This is a pilot, so as this goes along, if you have comments on how it works, I'm sure the state would love to hear your feedback. And I just have one word of caution as we begin this process or continue it. The planning process is really about collecting information, so you have information on risk, then contemplating what the implications are of that, and then deciding what to do about it. So initially, there'll be a lot of collecting of information, and some of that information you'll be providing to Eric, so it can be inserted into the plan. But please don't lose sight of the fact that we're not collecting information to put it into the plan. We're collecting information so you can contemplate it and think about the implications of it. And the thinking that you do at that point in the planning process is very hard to describe in paper, but it's the most critical piece of the plan preparation. It's where you make your decisions about what needs to be addressed and how best to go about addressing it. So I hope to be going along for the ride with you, and I'm sure maybe we'll meet in person soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Great. So, and will you talk now a little bit about hazard mitigation planning in New York State and the importance of it, et cetera?
Absolutely. So, so I work in the hazard mitigation section of the recovery section at DISHIS. That's the way we say our acronym. We administer several different FEMA grants in that section. That includes the public assistance dollars for repair of public infrastructure and some recovery dollars. We also administer the individual assistance grants that are available to homeowners after some declared events. And here we are talking about hazard mitigation. So we administer federal funding for hazard mitigation projects and plans, where this grant is funded through FEMA funding as well. But the intent is for long-term risk reduction. So we recognize here that as the frequency and severity of these extreme weather events, impacts your communities more and more every year, that the value of mitigation is even more prevalent. And so the best way to prepare for long-term risk reduction is to undergo this process of hazard mitigation planning. Historically, these plans have been, certainly static documents, large 1,000-page documents in a binder that often never get opened. They sit on a shelf and don't provide a lot of value to community operations. And what we're looking to do here is really shift that and to really transition this planning process into one that is meaningful for your communities. And the plans themselves are federally mandated in order to receive any of the federal mitigation dollars. So in order to use the hazard mitigation grant program for projects, or the new BRIC funding that is coming out, that's building resilient infrastructure in communities from FEMA, which will have a significant amount of funding, and the flood mitigation assistance program, you have to have a formal hazard mitigation plan that's been approved by FEMA and adopted by your community. And so while we are looking to meet requirements, we also want to make the process valuable. And so with this web-based approach, as Paul said, we moved our state plan toward in this direction last year, and we are now expanding this program to include county multi-jurisdictional planning efforts and share those resources that have been developed now in partnership with the University at Albany to better serve your communities and better focus the efforts that you need to provide, all the resources that are devoted from your, with your unique needs in mind and your unique interests for your community. You can really have that value added because of the data background and the data foundation that we're creating here with these mitigation plans online. We want to focus on your individual risk, and Avail has created this really incredible suite of tools that will show you across the board what is available, what the data tells us. But then it's, where your assets are and where the vulnerabilities are shown. But then we need to intersect those things with what the data can't tell us, and that's what you guys bring to the table here, and what's important to your communities. And as Paul said, once you identify those risks and vulnerabilities and your own unique capabilities, you want to know what you can do next. What can you do about that risk, and how can you reduce it long term? So we're real partners in this process. We're really excited about it. Sullivan County is also currently, I don't know if we're talking about this a little more, but also has a grant from the Department of State to complete the county resilience plan. And so this is a really unique opportunity to understand how we can leverage these efforts and the dollars associated with planning to gain the maximum value back to you. And now is the time, when we have funding, which we will have funding available shortly for first the hazard mitigation grant program, but also for FEMA's annual programs, BRIC and FMA, like I mentioned. There is a very short turnaround often with the application development time. And so now during this planning process, we hope you will be able to identify implementable actions and that we can help you provide cost estimates and some evaluation of a wider range of solutions for the problems that you are facing, so that when the time comes to apply for funding, you're ready to go and we have a better shot at successfully competing these applications, sometimes nationwide. So we're just very excited about this, and all of your feedback and the hard work that Sullivan County already and all of the communities within already puts into their planning efforts will just be value added back to our programs. And we want to make this process as strong as possible. We want to make it as easy as possible and as least burdensome to you all. And so during this process, the initial data gathering and information collection is really critical to setting the stage for future planning. So if there's anything, as others have said, please provide your feedback. If there's any ideas you have, if there's anything that could work better for you, if there are mechanisms that we could employ to make the process easier for you, this will benefit future communities as well. And for your own, I think this is a really wonderful opportunity, and we're really excited to move forward. One other thing I just wanted to mention, slightly off topic, but your participation is critical for multiple reasons, not only to get the actual work done in the way that reflects your community, but also it does contribute to the local match that is required as part of this project. So it is important to work with your planning liaison at Avail and the county to ensure that you're documenting all of the effort that you're putting in, and that we can capture that to match the funds that are being put in. But anyway, thank you all for participating, and we're going to be available, throughout this process and later on in the process to provide some real support in action development along the way.
Great, thank you, Karina. And so just to put it sort of context around everything, looking at how over time here, Sullivan County did your first hazard mitigation plan in 2005. Then the 2012 update that Jill referenced earlier that she was a part of, and that expired in 2017. And then mentioned the New York State Hazard Mitigation Plan update in 2019. And we're looking at 2020 as our update process, final product by January 21 with those funding lines. A recap that your role as a jurisdictional representative, even folks at the county, we're treating the county as a jurisdiction. So interview process and meetings, and I'll talk more about the interview process in just a minute, but it's to share your knowledge, locate any information you might have, inventory what you have in your community, and go over all of that information, review the information, as Paul Houle had mentioned, think about how best to organize your community towards solving some of the issues that you have, and develop strategies that move towards those goals. So I'd also like to share here the 2012 Hazard Mitigation Plan. For those of you who haven't reviewed it in a while, is available online as a PDF. You can grab that. I recommend reviewing what your community said in 2012, just to reacclimate yourself with that. And then also, if you want to look at the 2019 Hazard Mitigation Plan from New York State, which we worked on with Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, and created, as Paul said, the first statewide hazard mitigation plan that was online, web-based. So these are in your PowerPoint if you want to link to those as well. So talking about where we're at in the plan, what the strategy here is for getting all of this information together and moving through our planning process. You received a document from me on Friday that has this outreach strategy in it. Division of Homeland Security and Avail have developed this strategy document that we're utilizing in all 4 of the counties we're working in. And we've organized the process into these 5 groups. So when you review that outreach strategy document, what you're looking at is you're going to see these colors here in front of you. They signify the different groups, and then you'll see how we organize them based on the meetings, which groups are being asked to participate in certain meetings. And so the core planning group, which I mentioned, most of the folks that were on we introduced at the beginning of this PowerPoint are from the core planning group. The steering committee, as I also mentioned, is many of the people from the county who joined us for a similar presentation about a month or so ago. The steering committee is local experts, advisors, county reps, people who work for the county, and some jurisdictional representatives that have been handpicked by the Sullivan County folks as people that are important to have in the mix at a more on a higher responsibility level. And then we have the jurisdictional teams, which is really, the process right now is we're trying to build these jurisdictional teams in order to do a set of interviews with the jurisdictions. And the teams that we have identified are typically your supervisors, DPW folks, highway department folks, buildings and codes type folks, and we've built out a list of those via some work with the county and just through reaching out to those jurisdictions, trying to gather who are the best people to have on these jurisdictional teams. And we're asking you to also consider folks that may not have been reached out to yet. There might be somebody who is very involved in your community, who might have knowledge that's from previous times of being a supervisor or a previous time of being a building codes person or something along those lines, who can flesh out some of the both the risks and vulnerabilities, and then also some of the solutions that have worked in the past in your community. So if you know anyone who should be on any jurisdictional team, and each jurisdictional team is specific to the community, right? So we're working specifically, so we're going to be doing interviews with folks that are associated with, like, NeverSync, for instance, and then folks that are associated with Liberty, et cetera. And so if you know people that are valuable, like knowledge holders or decision makers in those communities, we're looking for your help in gathering those people up. Additionally, that goes for other stakeholders. If at some point we will be interested in bringing a more wide variety of folks to the table to talk about what we've gathered and what we're starting to design, and we'll be looking for input from other community members, nonprofits, schools, churches, et cetera, and local businesses. And we have some outreach. Some of the outreach plan is about reaching the public. There is a public commenting period at the end of once the draft plan is created, and so we're going to be looking for public input along the way as well. And as I mentioned earlier, as you go through this outreach strategy, those colors are associated with the different meetings that we are expecting your participation in. So steering committee and is the yellow, I believe. Yeah. So like, for instance, the steering committee is here today for the kickoff meeting. We're also expecting the steering committee to take part in some of these jurisdictional interviews, specifically the one the county of Sullivan. And a little bit more about these meetings that are coming up here. So I've mentioned jurisdictional interviews. Jurisdictional interviews are what we're planning to reach out to each and every jurisdiction and collect those folks together to do about a 2-hour process of going through I think you also probably have all looked at the jurisdictional survey that we sent out on Friday. We're going to go through those topics while also working in the software tools that you're about to see. And through that process, we're going to collect a lot of information from you about your local knowledge. After that, we're going to consolidate all that information and pull it together into multi-jurisdictional meetings that Michael Allen will talk a little bit about shortly. And then we'll follow that up with some strategy work where we are doing, where Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services will be asked to, we'll be providing folks with a presentation on how to develop good strategies, mitigation strategies, and how to execute those strategies. And then we will be doing another presentation later in the fall of the draft plan for comment. So that'll be the set of meetings that we have in that outreach strategy document.
Eric, can I just mention for anyone, I think we had a couple people pop on the call since. There is a chat box, or if you want to, just kind of periodically maybe say if anybody's hopped on. We really want to capture who's participating here. So if anybody's joined since, roll call, please let us know.
Thank you, Karina. And also in the agenda, or Erica, would you put into the chat the attendance log as well? If folks want to go in and just put an X in the column if they're here. And if we don't have your email address, we're trying to track down email addresses as well. So please provide that if you can. Okay, so more about these jurisdictional interviews. We are going to be reaching out to you. We started, I think many of you have gotten phone calls from us. We've been reaching out directly via telephone. We will now be reaching out directly via email as well to try to track down your schedule, your availability to schedule these jurisdictional interviews. As I mentioned, they're about 2 hours long, and we are really, this is one of the most important pieces, is to gather all this information, start to hear from you about your community so that we can distill it into a more focused discussion. So we're doing this between July 22nd and August 21st. We're giving rough time slots here from 9 to 11 a.m., 1 to 3 p.m., and 3 to 5 p.m., just so that we can be organized on our side. So if any of those slots look better for you than others, let us know, and we're going to be working with you and your jurisdictional team members to set up a date and time to do that interview. Before your jurisdictional interview, please review that survey that I sent out on Friday. And we'd like you to consider the following things in regards to your jurisdiction. So first and foremost, the natural hazards that affect your community. We are focusing on natural hazards, but feel free to offer any other hazards that you are concerned with, and we will talk about those as well. The website is set up around natural hazards, so most of what we are going to be focusing on are those natural hazards. But again, I know COVID is very high on a lot of people's lists right now of hazards of concern, and there may be other ones that are very important to your community that we should talk about. We'd also like you to consider all vulnerable assets, so buildings, roads, natural assets, vulnerable populations in your community, folks that are elderly, may not have the same ability to respond to disaster or a state of emergency, et cetera. Likewise, where there's children under the age of 5 or people in poverty may not have the same capacity to respond to emergency. And so we ask that you consider where some of your most vulnerable populations are as well, and we will be collecting information from you about that. We're also going to ask you about recent and future development, specifically thinking about recent and future development in hazard-prone areas, flood areas, et cetera. I know that Sullivan County has some recent development that might cause some other kinds of issues with landslides potentially, et cetera, or at least, that's what I've heard from some folks that I've spoken with. So just consider where recent or future development is potentially to increase natural hazard vulnerability. Also, think about your critical infrastructure. We have a full collection of what we know to be your critical infrastructure based on a number of data sets. It most likely is not a complete picture, and we are hoping that you will take a look at that list and provide us with things that we have missed. We have the ability to label any asset in your community as a critical infrastructure, and then start actions based on that. So start strategies to make sure that they are not vulnerable to natural hazards. And then we're also asking you to collect any and all government and local organization resources that may be useful in a time of crisis or are used in mitigation planning. So there's a number of different capabilities that we've identified. We'll introduce you to that as well. Those capabilities are identified as things that most communities probably have. Not all communities have every one of them, but they've been identified as useful in mitigation planning, and we're going to be looking to see if your communities have them and then what your understanding of your capacity as a community is in regards to those things. So as you go through this jurisdictional survey in preparation for your interview, we're asking that you fill out the sections that are labeled green and do your best to read all of the information in it. It really does provide a great context for why we're doing what we're doing in hazard mitigation planning and why the pieces of information are important to collect here. So you'll notice that as you go through the document that there's green sections on it pretty much every page. So just in closing here, review the entire jurisdictional survey document for context in advance of the jurisdictional interview that we're going to be setting up with you. Complete the green portions of it, and then email that and any other names of anybody else that you know in your community that we should be bringing onto the jurisdictional teams so that we can coordinate together to get that time put on the calendar. It's going to go pretty quickly from here to the middle of August. So the earlier we can get you on the calendar, the better. So if you expect to hear from us almost immediately after this call, we're gonna start reaching out to every single one of you, and the earlier we can get you on the calendar, the better to get all this collected before we end up meeting with you later in August at our multi-jurisdictional meetings. And so, Michael Allen, will you talk real quick about what to expect later in August at the multi-jurisdictional meetings?
Sure thing. What we plan to do is hold a series of meetings around the county. These were originally planned as in-person meetings, and then with the virus, we switched to planning for a digital format. And now, because we're not sure that everyone really has proper access to some of these tools and so forth, that we decided to go with a hybrid approach where we're going to host some of these meetings at various locations around the county, and then also at the same time be broadcasting digitally for folks who either can't attend or they don't want to go out because of social distancing. Depending, we don't know how things are going to be a month from now, so we're hedging our bets. But we'll be bringing maps of the jurisdictional areas to discuss. I'll be presenting an overview of what the Avail Labs has figured out so far based on their data crunching right now as far as known hazards and threat assessments, as well as some of the information that you guys are going to be providing to them from the interviews. We'll go through that, and then the real meat of it is we want to sit down with everybody and learn about what are the issues, the problems that you're experiencing in your jurisdiction. Hopefully we'll get some opportunity to get out there and see some of these areas in person so we have a better understanding of what's going on. And we just want to talk about what the problems are. And so essentially what you've got for this county, we've got 4 sets of meetings here. The first one's Wednesday, August 19th. That's going to be hosted at the Town of Delaware Town Hall. Then Thursday, August 20th, we're hosting the next one at the Town of Lumberland. And then Friday, August 21st, in the Town of Liberty, in the Government Center there. And then the following Monday, August 24th, at each of these meetings will be both in person for folks who want to show up in person. We find we get better input in person than these web-based things. But if folks prefer being online, that's fine. We're going to do it. We're going to do it both ways at the same time. We are hoping to get the most knowledgeable people out to these meetings. So, you know, find the oldest, most knowledgeable, curmudgeon-y folks that you know that have the institutional knowledge of what's been happening in the area. Those are the folks that we want to talk to. And we're going to take all of the information that we've gathered at those meetings and then work with Avail Labs to input this information into the plan.
Thank you, Michael. So just from a more contextual perspective, just looking at the calendar basically across the year, one more time, you know, we've been working since March with basically on the project planning, getting all the data together as best we can, getting the software up and running and testing it a little bit. July and August is for data collection and review, and then in September we will be looking to do more work on starting to think about your strategies, trying to get strategies into formulate our strategies and really talk them through about where we're going to be putting our energies going forward here. And again, Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services will be providing a mitigation strategy session to help guide that. And then we're looking into October as our presentation of the draft plan for public comment. Into November and January, we're looking at submitting to FEMA for review and jurisdictional adoption. So you'll be asked to, each jurisdiction is going to be asked to adopt formally as a community. So we'll want to put that onto your January calendars at the latest to be reviewed and adopted by your community. So are there any questions at this point about the outreach strategy and where we're going and what the plan is coming up here? Is there anybody that has any questions, concerns, or comments at this point? Okay, great. So I'm now going to talk a little bit about the piloting of the Mitigate NY tools. Everyone on this call will be seeing these in a very much more hands-on way in the very near future as part of your jurisdictional interviews. And many of you have seen them already. Again, what we have here are a couple of different items. First and foremost, we mentioned that all of these plans are going to be publicly available, web-based hazard mitigation plans. That is a product that is automated. For the most, some of it's automated, some of it is text entry by the planners on this project. And each and every one of you on this call is invited to become an admin user of the tools to be able to provide some narrative or provide information directly into the software tools. We think that many of the tools that are in the software suite are useful beyond just hazard mitigation planning. They've been designed that way, so you know, it's not something that's going to go away after this plan. You will have access to your state plan, the back end, right on through the entirety of the plan's existence, and you'll be able to utilize the tools that are in it. So the more that you see them, I think the more you'll probably realize that they are pretty valuable in some other parts of your daily workflow. So without any further ado, I think I'm just going to, I wanted to say this one thing here too. We're going to take a look at, you're going to see I'm going to go on to the live website right now. I'm going to be looking mostly at sullivan2012.mitigateny.org. This is because we filled in the software template with your previous information from your previous plan. As part of testing the software, as part of building the software, we've been working in pieces from your 2012 plan. So it's a populated template. The Sullivan.mitigateny.org, this one here, is, oops, let me just go back to that. This one here is an empty template aside from the data. So there's no narrative in it whatsoever. But that's what we're going to be filling out as we go through the planning process. So at the end of the day, the Sullivan.mitigateny.org is going to be your live web-based hazard mitigation plan. But just for the purposes of today, I'm going to be utilizing the 2012 plan just so that you can see the context of having narrative in the plan. So, so this is the new plan. As you can see, there's no writing in it.
What page are you on?
I am on Sullivan.mitigateny.org. Oh, so I'm moving out of the PowerPoint now to move into a live demonstration on the website. So if folks are following along on the PowerPoint, I'm at page 25 in the PowerPoint, and I'm gonna most of the rest of these slides are all going to be done in a live presentation. So looking at Sullivan2012.mitigateny.org. Again, this is because we have information filled in for this already based on your previous plan. What we have is this template is available for. It's basically been developed by Division of Homeland Security Emergency Services and the Albany Visualization and Informatics Lab. We've been working together to try to develop a way of displaying all of this data and all of this narrative in a way that reads relatively easily and provides context. So there's a landing page that shows your region, the context of your region, who your planning representatives are. Also, there's some data. Many of these visualizations you'll see are interactive, so we can go through and take a look at how various hazards are affecting your community. This here shows we have maps of by hazard type, so you have hurricane events and flooding events and wind events, and you can see on here how many events you've had over time. So in 2018, we had a lot more wind events than usual. Whereas in 2009, there was a lot more hail events than usual. So this is something that you can use to inspect sort of the natural hazards record of your community. And there's information about National Flood Insurance Program claims by town and by total amounts paid. And as I said earlier, we have information about your critical assets. So we have a collection of critical assets that we pulled together from a variety of resources. We're going to be looking for your input onto those, what you see as being critical infrastructure, and we will be amending this list. But we are able to look at it both, in the 100-year and 500-year floodplains, and so this will allow us to drill into places that are, critical infrastructure should be mitigated against flood hazards. So that's a place where we're going to be looking to you for information about if these are mitigated against flood already, and if not, it's a pretty good place to start for developing a strategy. And there's a number of pages here that you can click through at your own leisure. This is each section here in the plan it meets one of the FEMA requirements or multiple FEMA requirements. So it's designed so that FEMA reviewers and Division of Homeland Security state folks who are going to be reviewing this plan have that it allows them to follow their plan guidance documentation so that it touches every point that it's supposed to touch as a plan. But we also tried to organize it so it reads fairly well. And these are the hazards of concern, at least according to the National Weather Service, NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They have a data set called the Weather Events Data Set that they've been collecting really, like, they've been collecting it really since 1996 in a way that's useful for this operation that the software coding that we're doing here. So we have a record of events back to 1996 on this page here, and you can click around and take a look at the various hazards. As you click them, you're going to see just those hazards are located throughout the page, and you can look at all of the hazards together. And one of the things we're going to be asking you to do is on this hazards page, if you could review some of your latest, most recent natural hazard events. Take a look at those. We're going to be asking you questions about those. We'd like to know more about exactly what happened in some of these events. Specifically, if you had firsthand knowledge of them, it's helpful for us to get a picture of where things go wrong when they go wrong. So we're going to be looking for your input on all of that.
Eric, I just wanted to mention one thing because you mentioned the hazards of concern, and you said where the data set comes from, but I just want to make clear that why those are pulled out, and correct me or clarify, is that those are the hazards that have data that supports any damage that has occurred from those hazards. So there may be other hazards that are of a concern to your community, and we want to identify those and document the risks and vulnerabilities associated with those. But these that are displayed currently are because of the documented dollar damages that are associated with events of those hazards.
Thank you, Karina. That's exactly right. So there's a number of other pages with other pieces of information that are worth taking a look at. We have information about your asset inventory. We can take a look at a lot of different things here that are worth just poking around on this site and clicking onto some of these tables, and you'll see a lot of good information about your community is already available here. And really, during our interview process, we're going to be looking to confirm that what we have is accurate to your knowledge, or is if it points you in the direction of what you know to be on the ground when a natural hazard happens, or et cetera, et cetera. And one thing to note as well is that one of the requirements of a hazard mitigation plan is that you have what are called jurisdictional annexes. So each jurisdiction needs to talk specifically about their own risk, vulnerability, and strategies, goals and objectives, et cetera. So the way that the website is designed is that each and every piece that's applicable to a specific jurisdiction is also just going to be filtered based on what you've selected. So if we had information from Lumberland in here and we select Lumberland, what would happen is where that information is specific to Lumberland would be then updated on the site that way. So so basically what you're seeing now is it's taking, like the site is running through all of the data right now. Now it's filtered down to Lumberland. We know we have 1,134 total buildings. 25 are in the 1% or 100-year floodplain, and then 47 are in the 0.2% or 500-year floodplain. And site-wide, you can utilize. This allows you to sort of look at the jurisdictional annexes for every jurisdiction in the county. And so I mentioned earlier that there are planning tools that are behind this entire software. So this is the public presentation you're seeing here. Everything here at the end of the day is going to be what the public will have access to. So we're going to be filling out each and every section of this as part of building the plan, and then the public will have the ability to click around on all these pages and see all that. But you as jurisdictional representatives are going to be provided access beyond that. So as an administrator, if you're interested in utilizing these tools at all for beyond, for both the mitigation process and then for tracking mitigation or any other things that you realize this is useful for, I recommend just reaching out to us. We'll provide additional training. you'll also get to see all of this stuff as we do our jurisdictional interviews. And so this is the back end, and each one of these pieces here correlates with that front end that I was just showing you. So as each piece here it meets FEMA requirements and provides a back-end access to craft your language and then submit the language to the front end. We also have a series of forms here that we're going to be working with you on. So while we're doing these jurisdictional interviews, we're going to be asking you a series of questions about, for instance, capabilities. I mentioned earlier that we're interested in knowing about what capabilities you have in your community. And FEMA has a very clear guidance about what their types of capabilities that they have. And we're going to be looking to just understand what you have. So like your comprehensive master plan, what's your transportation plan, what's your, do you have a local waterfront revitalization program, et cetera. And we will collect an inventory of that and then talk with you about it. And as we talk with you, we're going to ask you a series of pointed questions trying to assess how it's being utilized and how it integrates with other pieces.
Something to mention here with capabilities is that we also provide guidance for these forms, and the guidance is, as you can see on the screen, you can click the question marks and the prompt will show up. And these are really in place to help you understand how to think about the capabilities and the capability types, and what capability would fall under which type, and how to better answer these questions. So guidance is available throughout this process when we're doing the interviews and so on.
Great, thank you, Erica. And so one of the tools in here that we imagine will be very useful to folks, both in this process and beyond, is this scenario planning tool. I'm not going to get too deep into this today, but there's this pretty powerful software tool that I think you'll see pretty quickly what the value of it is, and we're going to work for a little while in this on the jurisdictional interview process. So what this is a mapping software that allows us to really zoom into communities and see what is at risk in the community. So I just had loaded in a hydrology model that we ran. This is the actual FEMA floodplain that you're looking at here. That's the 100-year floodplain. This is the 500-year floodplain. And so what we're seeing here are buildings that are at risk in the floodplain here. So we can click on these things. We can start actions this way, or collect them together into different collections that have various types of organizing principles. I don't know how to say it, but for instance, when I worked in this tool with Jill Wire a couple of weeks ago, and she was pointing out, I think it was in Neversink, a couple of places that are of interest. And recently I was in Liberty, took a tour of this creek here. And so, one thing that we'll end up doing in the jurisdictional interviews is we'll basically try to collect information on each of these places. Being able to say, okay, well, here's a place where we know we have a known issue, and we can name it, label it, etc., and collect it so that our team now has more and more information that we've gathered out of this entire process, and we can then map it onto the public plan, etc. So there'll be more on this in the future. I don't want to overwhelm you with it. There's a lot here that I think is very valuable for not just for hazard mitigation planning, but for other types of things that you might do in your community. Did I miss anything from anyone on my team here about this, the tour of the tools, that's worth bringing up?
I think it's important to note that you had mentioned you can toggle between the jurisdictions. And when you do click on your specific jurisdiction, you can edit the information on the content management, which is the home page. And so it does become very specific to your jurisdiction.
Right.
All of that information. So just trying, to really hit home with that.
Yeah,
Right.
and I have to say, I mean, to say did you miss something is like absurd, because there's so much. Of course you missed something. These tools are so comprehensive, and I think it's just really important that you see kind of the breadth of information that's being documented here, just to underscore the importance of getting that information in for the first time, right? When you get it in for the first time, everything proceeding is going to be that much easier. It's about updating and confirming and adding to, enhancing, right? But we're creating something here that means you don't have to do it over and over and over again, right? It can be leveraged for the next planning process. And the state, our agency, once this is done, can work with other agencies like DEC, your Department of State, to potentially expand the scope of what's in here. I mean, that's in the future. I'm just saying that the potential value is so great. So just, really, I hope that everybody sees the opportunity for what it is, and that is to create a real foundation of information for the county and for each community that can be accessed by so many people, state included, but your communities, by the public, that can be so accessible and hopefully so valuable later on. So really get it all in now.
Great.
Clarification request.
Sure.
Yeah, on page 20 about multi-jurisdictional meetings, you said that the jurisdictional meeting for Coshecton, Delaware, and Bethel Town on Wednesday the 19th was going to be at the Delaware Town Hall, but on this page it says the Bethel Town Hall. I think that's the correct site, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah, we will get that updated and over to you, and specifically to the folks from those communities. Jill, I don't know if I put that location in or if that was.
I was just noticing that what we had up on the screen wasn't matching my PDF of the dates. So we should double check these.
Okay.
Right, I think we could double check,
Thank
but
you.
I think we were talking about Town of Delaware Town Hall because it's because they do have a pavilion right there. But I mean Bethel, yeah, I think
Okay.
we are.
Just wanted to be clear on that. Thanks.
Okay. And Michael, you're saying that the dates aren't accurate to what you have on your calendar.
Well, yeah, I noticed it wasn't matching what I pasted into my calendar, and I noticed that the earlier draft of the PDF of this was different. So after this, we'll just double back and confirm all this.
All right. Yeah, and look for an updated schedule from us pretty quickly here. Hopefully after this call, we'll iron that out and get it back over to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great. Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I guess I would like to say one other thing, which is about engagement with others in your community. There's a lot of work that happens across, over the years, but a lot of different studies from different state agencies, local agencies, nonprofits, and I really cannot stress enough the importance of getting those individuals to the table. And we want this to be a comprehensive, first repository, right? An inventory of all of the hard work that's already been done, so that we can use it, so that others don't have to do it again in the future, so that we can recognize which have value and should be replicated in neighboring communities. We really want to get as much information here as possible, and we want to not have to, redo for your own sake, have to, look at work that's already been done. So where that work has already, where work has been done in your community, even if it's been through a private firm doing a local flood assessment, or a business that needed to study drainage in that area. If you know of those types of studies that have occurred in your community, it is really, really beneficial to reach out to those individuals and see if at least you can get the documentation that was resulted from those studies. But even better would be their voices at the table during your jurisdictional interviews and meetings. The more kind of vast and variety of people you have included, the better your plan will be, and the better we can help you and support you in developing actions.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, there are any other questions, comments, concerns, anything that we can address today? Okay, so look forward to, you're going to hear from all of us again soon. As I said early on, each of the folks from Avail is a liaison for a community. We're going to be working directly with those communities to set up these interviews that we've been talking about today. That's the first thing that's going to come out of the gate here. You're going to get some emails and some more phone calls